Usually, when you defeat an enemy, you just destroy them.
Right.
Yeah.
You dismantle them, remove them from the board completely.
Exactly. It's binary. I mean, you win, they lose.
Right. It's just self-preservation.
But so back in the spring of 1855, you have this 20-year-old preacher, Charles Spurgeon.
Just 20 years old, which is crazy to think about.
It really is. And he stands up in London and basically argues that God's ultimate victory, it isn't destroying his enemies at all.
No, it's way more subversive than that.
Way more. He says God's ultimate victory is taking his absolute fiercest enemies and, like, turning them into his most dangerous weapons.
It completely upends the entire human rulebook for conflict. I mean, if someone is actively trying to murder you and your family...
You want them gone.
Exactly. You don't aim to make them your brother. You want them destroyed. But Spurgeon is pointing out that divine grace just operates on this entirely different axis of power.
Well, welcome to Reformed Thinking, the deep dive where we tear apart the texts, the theology and the history that really shape our understanding of faith.
Glad to be here. We have a massive one today.
We really do. Today we are looking at a truly monumental sermon. It's Charles Haddon Spurgeon's Paul's First Prayer.
Delivered at Exeter Hall, March 25, 1855.
Right. And he based it on this tiny, almost throwaway fragment from the book of Acts, chapter 9, verse 11. It just says, "Behold, he prayeth."
Just 3 words, really.
Yeah. And if you are listening to this right now, whether you read the Puritans for breakfast every day, or maybe you're just wondering what genuine, raw spiritual communication actually looks like, this deep dive is for you. We're
going to break down the actual mechanics of true prayer.
And the sudden shock of sovereign grace, like exactly how God rewires a completely hostile human heart.
And, it is so vital to understand the setting for this.
Yeah, paint the picture for us.
So Exeter Hall was just massive. It held thousands of people. And you have Spurgeon, who was only 20, commanding this vast crowd in the middle of, smog-choked industrial Victorian London.
Right, the heart of the empire.
Exactly. And he takes them all the way back to the dust of the Damascus Road to look at Saul of Tarsus, the man who would, eventually become the Apostle Paul.
But he doesn't just do it as a history lesson, right?
No, not at all. He holds up Saul's violent conversion as a mirror for the audience.
He wants them to see themselves in it.
Yeah, he wants to show this crowd that the exact same sudden, overwhelming force that arrested Saul is what's required to wake up a polite, church-going Londoner.
Which is such a brilliant hook, because he opens by talking about how God deals with the enemies of the church.
Right. He lays out basically 2 methods.
The first one is confusion. Like, God just lets the enemies drive themselves into absolute madness and ruin.
Which is kind of what we expect, right? Classic divine judgment.
Yeah, just let them overplay their hand. But the second method, and this is the core of it, is conversion.
Yes.
Spurgeon leans so hard into this idea that God is not up in heaven, wringing his hands, worried about whether the church is going to survive.
He is entirely sovereign. Spurgeon frames that divine sovereignty right from his opening breath.
He really does.
He asserts that God will not suffer his church to be ultimately injured. So the baseline premise for everything that follows is just total security for the believer.
Which is incredibly comforting. But the method of that security is what's so fascinating. Because bringing light out of darkness, taking the stony heart of a militant, and just transforming it.
And the ultimate case study for that is Saul.
Right. But I actually have to stop here because Spurgeon's description of pre-conversion Saul is it's terrifying.
It's very visceral.
It really is. He doesn't paint Saul as just some misguided, stuffy academic who spent a little too much time reading scrolls.
No, he paints a monster.
A literal monster. He reminds the crowd that Saul was, and this is a quote, bespattered with the blood of Stephen.
Right. He procured the legal enactments to drag Christians to death.
And then Spurgeon calls Saul a werewolf.
Such a specific word choice.
It is. He says Saul was a werewolf who, having tasted blood, goes exceedingly mad and travels to Damascus to glut himself with the gore of men and women.
Yeah.
A werewolf. Like, why use that specific mythological creature? I mean, why not a lion or a bear?
Well, because a werewolf isn't just a dangerous animal, right?
Right.
A werewolf is a human whose very nature has been violently hijacked by a curse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when a human becomes a werewolf in the lore, they lose their reason, their empathy, all their humanity. They are driven entirely by this monstrous, uncontrollable bloodlust.
So it's a completely unnatural state.
Exactly. By using that exact word, Spurgeon is diagnosing the psychology of religious zealotry when it's divorced from grace.
He wasn't just acting rationally.
Not at all. He wasn't debating the finer points of the Torah. He was consumed by a demonic appetite. Spurgeon wants his 19th century audience to feel the absolute visceral depravity of the man. Saul was actively hunting the bride of Christ.
So God steps in. And Spurgeon describes this intervention in a way that is practically like cinematic.
It really is.
He says Saul is riding toward Damascus, and just as with his lance in rest he was dashing against Christ, Christ met him, unhorsed him, threw him on the ground.
It's a medieval joust.
It totally is.
Yeah.
But here's the friction. And I know this is a huge sticking point for a lot of people when they first encounter Reformed theology.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
Right. Like, why does God choose to save the werewolf? And more importantly, doesn't this totally violate Saul's free will?
The free will question.
Yeah. God just physically blasts him off a horse and forces him to change teams. Like, how does Spurgeon reconcile that?
That is the core tension.
Okay.
But Spurgeon operates firmly within the Reformed framework,
Right.
which means he views this not as a polite negotiation, but as a sovereign arrest.
A sovereign arrest. I like that phrasing.
From this perspective, Saul's quote-unquote free will was completely enslaved to his hatred of Christ.
Okay, so he wasn't really free to begin with.
Exactly. If God had just offered Saul a polite choice on that road, Saul, in his werewolf state, would have chosen to kill the messenger.
He would have just thrown a spear at him.
Exactly. The doctrine of irresistible grace doesn't mean God drags people to heaven kicking and screaming against their will.
Which is the caricature people always make.
Right. It actually means God fundamentally changes their desires. He performs heart surgery.
Right. Right there on the road.
Yes. Spurgeon says Christ gave Saul a new heart and a right spirit right there in the dirt. He didn't bypass Saul's will. He resurrected it so that Saul would willingly, desperately choose Christ.
The suddenness of it is just staggering. Jesus asks, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And then, boom, total rewiring.
Immediate.
But the surgery doesn't end on the road, does it?
No, it's just the beginning.
Because God strikes him blind, leads him by the hand into Damascus, and then basically lays him prostrate in the dark for 3 days and 3 nights.
No food, no water.
Right. Why sensory deprivation? If the heart surgery was done on the road, why leave him in a dark room for 3 whole days?
Well, think about the mechanism of Saul's pride. His entire life, his confidence was based on what he could see, what he could read, the phylacteries he wore.
The public respect he commanded in the temple.
Exactly. His physical sight and his religious status were inextricably linked. So by striking him blind, God is shutting down Saul's primary interfaces with the world.
Like unplugging him from the matrix.
Exactly like that. He forces Saul to look entirely inward and upward. For 3 days, Saul is in a tomb, essentially mirroring Christ's own 3 days in the grave.
Oh, that parallel is amazing.
The old vicious Pharisee is actively dying in that room. Spurgeon says God made mystic sounds go murmuring through his ears.
So his whole theology is just unraveling.
Yes. The theology he thought he knew was being dismantled and violently rebuilt around the person of Jesus. It was a deep, agonizing, all-consuming fire for those 3 days.
So God breaks him down physically and psychologically. But how does this violent, earthly arrest translate into a spiritual metric?
What do you mean?
Like, how does heaven even measure what's happening in that dark room on Straight Street? Because God doesn't just leave Saul to figure it out alone. He triggers a response.
Right, he goes to Ananias.
Yes. He goes to Ananias, a believer in Damascus, and gives him what has to be the most specific GPS coordinates imaginable.
It's incredibly precise. God says, arise and go into the street, which is called Straight, and inquire in the house of Judas for one called Saul of Tarsus. For behold, he prayeth.
Which is just so detailed.
Spurgeon camps out on this verse to marvel at the meticulous omniscience of God. He points out that God doesn't just have this vague, macroscopic view of humanity.
Like a God looking down from a cloud at a sea of ants.
Right. God knows the street, he knows the house owner's name, he knows the hometown of the man.
And crucially, he knows the exact hidden posture of the man's soul.
Yes.
And to explain how God knows this, Spurgeon uses an analogy that I think, honestly, we almost miss today because of when he said it.
The telegraph analogy.
Yes. He compares prayer to the telegraph. You have to remember, in 1855, the telegraph was absolute cutting-edge, mind-bending technology.
It was the internet of its day.
Literally.
Yeah.
You could tap a key in London and someone miles and miles away would hear it almost instantly. It felt like magic.
Right.
But Spurgeon tells his congregation, essentially, you think the electric fluid is fast, I read of something faster.
Such a great line.
Isn't it? He quotes Isaiah, "Before they call, I will answer, and while they are speaking, I will hear." He says a single tear from a broken heart outstrips the telegraph.
It's a brilliant way to contextualize the divine for a rapidly industrializing society.
It really grounds it.
By using the telegraph, Spurgeon is bridging the gap between the infinite majesty of God and his intimate accessibility.
Because we get so conditioned to think of God as distant, right?
Absolutely. Like this cosmic watchmaker sitting in a perpetual dream separated from us by galaxies.
But the telegraph requires wires. It requires physical infrastructure, operators, delays.
Right. But heaven's communication requires only a shattered ego, and the reception is instantaneous.
Instantaneous. And Spurgeon even talks about God catching that single tear. He says God puts it into the lacrimatory of heaven.
The tear bottle.
Yeah, the tear bottle. I actually looked this up because I wasn't super familiar with the term.
Oh, what did you find?
So lacrimatories were these small glass or terracotta vials that archaeologists found in ancient Roman and Greek tombs.
Okay.
Mourners would supposedly catch their tears in them during a funeral and leave them with the dead as this permanent sign of love and grief.
Wow. That is powerful.
Right. And Spurgeon applies this directly to God, saying he bottles our tears. He just makes prayer so fiscally intimate.
That's a beautiful image.
He says tears are the diamonds of heaven and sighs are part of the music of Jehovah's throne. Even if your prayer is just a groan, God reads it perfectly.
And notice the reaction on the other end of that telegraph line.
What do you mean?
The text says, "Behold," which implies a massive announcement. Spurgeon suggests that when Jesus spoke those words to Ananias, Jesus was actually smiling.
Oh, I love that.
It's the good shepherd rejoicing because he found the sheep that was just recently trying to bite him.
Trying to tear him apart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the ripple effect goes even further. It hits the angels.
Yes, the cosmic party.
Spurgeon paints this poetic picture of angels tracking God's elect. They watch over them through all their wanderings and sin, all their rebellion.
Just waiting.
Waiting. And the millisecond the sinner drops a genuine tear and cries out, the angel flies to heaven and shouts, "Behold, he prayeth."
And they just set heaven's bells ringing. They threw a jubilee over one guy in a dark room.
But Spurgeon pushes it even further, and this is where it gets incredibly personal for him and the audience.
He brings in the departed saints, right?
Yes. He tells a story about his own grandmother who nursed him when he was young.
Right.
He imagines her looking down from the golden street.
Now wait, I want to pause here. Is Spurgeon actually teaching that our dead relatives are leaning over the clouds, watching our every single move on earth?
Right, because that feels a little doctrinally shaky, even for him.
Yeah, it sounds more like folklore than Reformed theology.
Well, it's important to understand Spurgeon's rhetorical style here. He clarifies immediately that there is no sorrow in heaven.
Okay.
So she couldn't have been looking down and weeping when he was living in sin.
That makes sense.
He's using pastoral imagination, a kind of sanctified, poetic speculation, if you will, to emphasize the unity of the church triumphant in heaven and the church militant on earth.
Oh, so they are connected.
Deeply connected. He believes the joy of heaven is directly tied to the triumphs of grace on earth. So he pictures his grandmother experiencing a double bliss the exact moment she sees her grandson finally pray.
It's a huge rhetorical move.
It really is. He uses this to emotionally corner the young men in his audience.
How so?
He basically looks at them and asks, "Your godly mother is in glory right now. Is she experiencing that joy over you?"
Wow. That is rhetorically devastating.
It completely pierces through their apathy.
And he doesn't leave out the ministers on earth either. He talks about the crushing burden of preaching.
The weight of it.
Yeah, he compares a pastor seeing a new convert finally pray to a rescuer pulling a drowned man from a flood.
You apply CPR, you're pumping the chest one.
And finally you see the chest rise. And you shout, "He breathes! He breathes!" Because a man who doesn't pray is literally a dead man.
Exactly. It's spiritual respiration. As long as you are praying, you are breathing the atmosphere of heaven.
Okay, so heaven is ringing bells. Jesus is smiling. The angels are throwing a jubilee.
But down on the ground.
Yeah, down on the ground, in Damascus, Ananias is having a completely different reaction.
It's very different.
When he gets the telegram from God, his response is basically, "Lord, are you sure? Because I've seen this guy's file."
I know his rap sheet.
Right. I know what he did in Jerusalem. He has legal authority to arrest us. Ananias is utterly paralyzed by disbelief.
And Ananias' shock exposes a really deep flaw in how we instinctively view grace.
What do you mean?
We all have this subconscious tier list of who is quote-unquote savable and who isn't.
Oh, absolutely. We rank sinners.
We totally do. And Spurgeon admits this as a pastor. He says he sometimes looks at moral, polite people in his church and thinks, surely God is working on them.
The nice people.
The nice people. But then they fade away, and instead God brings him the outcast, the addict, the reprobate.
The werewolf.
The werewolf. The very people we write off as beyond repair are often the exact ones God targets.
To hammer this home, Spurgeon tells this incredible story of the old sailor.
I love this illustration.
Me too. He describes this 60-year-old man who is basically the worst guy in the village. Notorious for drinking, swearing, just a rough life.
The absolute last guy you'd expect to see sitting in a pew.
Exactly. But he stumbles into a chapel one day, and he hears a sermon about Jesus weeping over Jerusalem.
And his tough exterior just shatters.
It totally shatters. He
Yeah.
thinks, did Jesus Christ ever weep over a wretch like me?
The realization of grace.
Yeah. And the sailor says he realizes he needs a new owner. So he decides to, and I love this maritime metaphor, he decides to scuttle the old ship and sink her altogether and sail into the colors of Prince Emmanuel.
Scuttle the old ship is such a violent, decisive phrase.
It really is.
You don't scuttle a ship if you plan to repair it on the weekend.
Right, you don't patch it up.
No, you bore holes in the hull and you let it plunge to the absolute bottom of the ocean.
Because it's useless.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The sailor realizes his past life, his identity, his entire framework is just beyond salvaging. He must sink it completely to start a new voyage.
And this is where Spurgeon brings in the metaphor of the chemist, right?
Yes. He says human chemistry can refine gold, but it takes divine chemistry to transmute base metal into precious jewels.
God doesn't just polish diamonds.
No. He takes petal stones straight from the gutter and turns them into children of Abraham.
Which I think raises a really uncomfortable question for all of us.
Let's hear it.
Does human goodness actually get in the way of realizing we need this kind of grace?
Oh, undoubtedly.
Because if you think you're a diamond already, you don't think you need transmutation. You just think you need a little buffing.
You think you need a life coach, not a savior.
Exactly. But if you're the swearing sailor or you're the werewolf covered in blood, you know you are base metal.
You know you have nothing to offer.
Right. You know you need a total miracle or you are completely doomed.
You've hit on the very danger of self-righteousness. Morality without grace creates this illusion of self-sufficiency.
It's dangerous.
It acts as an inoculant against the gospel. It's like you get just enough religion to keep you from catching the real thing.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to put it.
And when God chooses the unlikely, the enemy, the broken, it completely removes all human boasting.
Which is exactly what Spurgeon does to his congregation. He turns this directly onto them.
He doesn't let them off the hook.
Not at all. He tells them not to just marvel at Saul. He says, look at yourselves. Isn't it just as strange that you are a Christian?
Right. When you look at your own heart, your own private failures and thoughts, it should feel like a dream that God bypassed others and chose you.
We should feel the exact same bewilderment that Ananias felt.
Absolutely.
But the bewilderment of Ananias wasn't just that Saul was converted, was it?
No, the shock was that Saul was praying.
Yes. And this is where Spurgeon drops what I think is honestly the most penetrating, uncomfortable truth of the entire sermon.
It's a hard pivot.
It is.
Yeah.
Saul was a Pharisee of the Pharisees. He was part of the strictest sect of Judaism.
He likely had phylacteries strapped to his head and his arms.
He went to the temple constantly. He recited long, elaborate, beautiful prayers
Every single day.
every day. Yet Spurgeon claims that the phrase, behold, he prayeth, was a novelty to Saul himself.
A total novelty.
Spurgeon is saying that up until that pitch-black room in Damascus, Saul had never actually prayed a single day in his entire life.
It is a devastating deconstruction of religious performance.
It really is.
Spurgeon draws this unforgiving titanium line between reciting religious forms and offering true, desperate petition.
He basically imagines Saul in his Pharisee days standing up in the temple offering these flawless orations, saying, Lord, I thank thee I am not as other men are.
And Spurgeon says all of it was dust. It was a complete failure.
He openly mocks it.
Yeah.
He mocks the idea of a person standing before the creator of the universe speaking, quote, Latin and blank verse, while God just sits there in calm indifference, ignoring the theater.
Because it is theater.
It's totally theater. It's like, imagine a world-class chef realizing they spent their entire life eating plastic display food.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
You know, the kind they put in the windows of those restaurants?
Yeah, the shiny plastic bowls of ramen or whatever.
Exactly. It looks like a steak. It's painted like a steak. It has grill marks. But if you eat it, you starve to death.
Because there's no substance.
None. Rote prayer looks like communion with God, but there is zero spiritual caloric value.
None at all.
So why do we do this? Why do humans naturally gravitate toward plastic display food instead of the real thing?
Because the plastic food is safe.
Safe.
Yeah, it's controllable. Real prayer is inherently dangerous because it requires the death of the ego.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
When you rely on rote forms, you are managing the interaction. You know the script, you hit your marks, you check the religious box, and you get to maintain your dignity.
You have to get messy.
Exactly. But a genuine groan from a broken soul is messy. It's an admission of total bankruptcy.
Saul the Pharisee prayed out of his abundance in his pride.
Right, but Saul, the blinded, broken sinner, prayed out of his absolute desperation. That is the difference between religious recitation and true prayer.
Spurgeon uses this really tragic example of an old gentleman to illustrate this.
Oh, the man who prayed for his parents?
Yes. This man was taught as a young child to pray, "God bless my father and mother,"
Yeah.
and his brain just went on autopilot.
For decades.
He repeated that exact phrase every single night for 70 years, long after his parents were both dead.
It's heartbreaking, really.
It is. It wasn't until he was an old man that God finally broke his heart, and the man realized he had been moving his lips for a lifetime, but he had never actually prayed.
Oh, just going through the motions.
That is terrifying, because it makes you wonder, how do we know? How do we know if we are just mindlessly reciting what Spurgeon calls myriad cold readings, or if we are actually praying?
Well, Spurgeon gives a very clear litmus test for that.
What is it?
He says that poor old man finally threw the prayer book away, he forgot his blank verse, and he simply cried out from his soul, "Oh, Lord, hear, for Christ's sake."
Just a raw plea.
And God immediately heard him. Spurgeon asserts that one hearty prayer, one genuine groan, is worth more than 10,000 forms.
10,000.
God abhors prayers that spring only from the lips. He loves the ones that are forged in the furnace of the heart.
So if your prayer isn't born out of a deep sense of your own need and Christ's sufficiency,
It's just noise.
just noise. And he applies this so sharply to the crowd. He specifically singles out the young men.
He loves to target the young men.
He really does. He points to this hypothetical young man who promised his parents, when he left home, that he would keep up his morning and evening prayers.
But eventually he grows ashamed of them.
Right. He gets to the city, gets busy, grows ashamed, and abandons them entirely.
And Spurgeon asks him a chilling question.
What will you do when you come to die?
Will you have the watchword at the gates of death?
Will you enter heaven by prayer?
And the answer is obviously no. Without genuine prayer, the door is completely locked. Religion without communion is just a corpse.
Which logically drives us into how Spurgeon categorizes prayer as evidence.
Right, the threefold argument?
Yeah.
Yeah.
True prayer isn't just a novelty to a converted heart. It is an irrefutable proof. Spurgeon says the phrase, "For behold, he prayeth," served as an argument for Ananias' safety, an argument for Paul's sincerity, and an argument for Paul's divine election.
Let's break those down, starting with safety.
Okay, so Ananias is terrified. Going to Saul's house feels like volunteering to walk into a wood chipper.
It's a suicide mission.
Totally. But God's only defense, the only security clearance he gives Ananias is, "Behold, he prayeth."
And Spurgeon says that was enough.
You'd always trust a praying man.
Always.
To prove this, Spurgeon tells this great story of the Swiss inn.
Oh, this is a brilliant atmospheric illustration.
It really is. So you have two men, a Christian and an infidel, and they are traveling together through a really dangerous forest in Switzerland in the 1800s.
And travel back then was genuinely perilous. You didn't know who was running these remote roadside inns.
Right, and they are forced to stop at a very suspicious-looking place because it's getting dark.
And the men are both terrified.
They are gripping their weapons. They think the innkeeper is going to rob them and murder them in their sleep.
But then, before bed, the landlord comes to their room.
He knocks on the door and asks if he can read scripture and pray with them.
And they agree.
Yeah. And after the landlord prays and leaves, they go upstairs, and suddenly the infidel says, "I am not at all afraid now."
Why? Because the host prayed.
Exactly. Even the infidel recognized that a house, and this is Spurgeon's phrase, a house roofed by prayer and walled with devotion was a safe place.
True prayer fundamentally alters the environment and the character of a person.
Roofed by prayer. That is just incredible imagery.
It really is. Now, the second argument is sincerity.
Right. Spurgeon argues that secret prayer is the ultimate lie detector test of religion.
How so?
She says, if Jesus had told Ananias, "Behold, he preacheth," Ananias could have said, well, he might be a deceiver.
Which happens all the time.
Right. If Jesus said, "Behold, he gives money to the poor," Ananias could say, he might just be trying to buy his way into our ranks.
But he prayeth settles it completely.
Spurgeon insists that home piety is the best piety. If a man prays alone in his closet, his religion is real.
Because public religion is incredibly easy to counterfeit.
Oh, it's so easy.
You can learn the right theological vocabulary. You can attend all the right conferences. You can even stand behind a pulpit and preach a decent sermon.
There is a massive social reward for public piety.
Exactly. People applaud you. But private prayer, when the door is locked, when there is no audience, no applause, literally zero social capital to be gained.
That requires something real.
It requires a genuine, desperate relationship with the living God. Hypocrites don't groan in the dark.
Spurgeon says it so bluntly. Praying will make you leave off sinning, or sinning will make you leave off praying.
Secret prayer is the absolute baseline of spiritual sincerity.
Okay, so here's where we hit the absolute deepest theological water in the sermon. The third argument, election.
There we go.
Spurgeon takes the simple, everyday act of prayer and links it directly to the doctrine of unconditional election.
Which is a heavy doctrine.
It is, and a lot of people hate this doctrine. They find it paralyzing.
They do.
Because if God chose who would be saved before the foundation of the world, people get tied up in knots. They lay awake at night wondering, am I elect? Are my kids elect?
It creates a lot of existential dread.
It does. And Spurgeon doesn't apologize for the doctrine at all. He says he is just a footman delivering a message from headquarters. He can't alter the message.
Right.
But I have to push back here on behalf of the listener. If election is fixed before time, doesn't telling people to look at their prayers just turn prayer into another stressful, works-based metric?
How do you mean?
Like, am I sweating enough in prayer to prove I'm in the club? How does Spurgeon connect the eternal decree of election to the daily struggle of prayer without ruining the grace of it?
That is the exact trap people fall into. They view prayer as the payment required to secure election or the performance required to prove it.
Right.
But Spurgeon fiercely guards against that. He connects them by making prayer the visible, tangible fruit of the invisible, eternal root.
Okay, root and fruit.
He knows people torture themselves trying to peek into the hidden books of heaven. His pastoral genius is in how he simplifies it.
How does he simplify?
He basically says, do you want to know if you are elect? Don't try to unravel the mysteries of eternity. Look at your own chest. Is the heart beating?
Do you pray?
Yes. Do you have a sincere, tearful desire to come to Christ?
So the prayer isn't the cause of the election?
Not at all.
It's the symptom of it.
Precisely. If you are praying with genuine, broken sincerity, it is because the Holy Spirit has quickened you. Dead men don't cry out for medicine.
No.
If the Spirit has quickened you, it is because the Son has redeemed you. And if the Son redeemed you, it is because the Father ordained you before the foundation of the world.
So it's a chain.
It's an unbreakable chain. The act of prayer is the heartbeat proving the patient has been resurrected.
Spurgeon says if you can answer yes to the simple question, do you pray, then you never need to be afraid of non-election.
You read your election not in the secret decrees of God, but in the present reality of your own heart's cry.
That reframes it entirely. It takes this lofty, intimidating theology completely out of the ivory tower and puts it right on the bedside floor.
It's profoundly practical.
Which brings us to the crescendo of the sermon. Spurgeon shifts gears into his application, and he directs his final words to two distinct groups.
The children of God and the ungodly.
And he is absolutely relentless with both of them.
He spares no one.
When he addresses the Christians, he acts like a spiritual physician diagnosing this widespread sickness in the church, the loss of spiritual confidence.
Right.
He tells the believer, if you are sitting here today and you don't know whether you are a child of God, if you have lost the joy of your salvation and the sweet savor of his love, I will tell you exactly where you lost it.
You lost it in your closet.
You stop praying.
And what's amazing is that he confesses this from his own life.
I couldn't believe that part.
This is the Prince of Preachers, the guy drawing thousands every Sunday, and he openly admits that he has gone up to the pulpit without fire, read his Bible with no light on it, and felt totally disconnected from God.
And he traces all back to neglecting private prayer.
Yes. He warns his congregation about giving God what he calls the fag end of the day.
And we definitely need to clarify that term because in modern English, that sounds highly offensive.
Very much so.
But in 19th century British slang, a fag end just meant the frayed, useless leftover end of a piece of cloth or a rope.
Right. It means the scraps.
The absolute worst part.
Spurgeon is saying you wake up, you rush out the door into your business with a hurried, mindless word to God. Then at night, when your brain is fried, your body is exhausted, and you have absolutely nothing left to give him.
You toss God the frayed, useless scraps of your attention.
You give him the fag end of the day, and then you wonder why you have no communion with him.
It is a devastating critique of nominal, culturally comfortable Christianity.
It applies just as much today as it did then.
He looks at the massive religious machine of 1855 London, and he is entirely unimpressed.
He sees huge crowds on Sunday mornings.
Right, but only a handful of people at the week evening prayer meetings?
And he essentially asks, how can we expect God to pour out his Spirit on a church that doesn't even care to ask for it?
And his proposed solution is it's pure, unhinged Spurgeon imagery. He brings up the biblical story of Samson.
The Samson's foxes metaphor. It is wild, aggressive imagery.
So aggressive.
Yeah.
So in the book of Judges, Samson catches 300 foxes, ties their tails together, puts a flaming torch between them, and releases them into the Philistines' grain fields to burn down their entire harvest.
Right. And Spurgeon says he wishes he could take his listeners, tie the firebrands of prayer to them like Samson's foxes, and send them running into the churches to set them all on fire for God.
He wants to cause a massive conflagration of devotion.
He wants the whole church to smoke like a sacrifice to God's throne.
He is screaming to the believers that if you neglect prayer, you have ceased to breathe.
And then the tone in Exeter Hall shifts entirely.
You can almost feel the temperature drop in the room.
Yes, as he turns to the ungodly, the unconverted.
The pastoral burden he feels for lost souls is immense. He compares himself to a watchman fighting off sleep, or to the dying keeper of the Eddystone Lighthouse.
We have to talk about the Eddystone Lighthouse.
We do, because this wasn't just a random metaphor he pulled out of thin air.
No, the Eddystone Rocks were this treacherous, lethal reef off the coast of Cornwall.
It was a literal graveyard for ships.
Building a lighthouse there was an engineering nightmare. Several previous versions had been completely destroyed by storms.
So when Spurgeon mentions Eddystone, the audience immediately pictures crashing waves, howling winds, and absolute peril.
Exactly. Spurgeon paints this vivid picture of the old lighthouse keeper.
The man is dying, his life is failing fast, but there is a massive storm raging outside.
And the keeper knows that if the lights go out, hundreds of sailors will smash into the rocks and drown.
So he summons every last ounce of his dying strength to creep around the glass, trim the wicks, and keep the beacon fire blazing.
Spurgeon looks at his congregation and says, "That is exactly how I view my preaching."
I am a dying man speaking to dying men.
Yes. He is using whatever breath he has left to keep the warning lights burning, to guide their souls away from the rocks of sin and toward Jesus.
And the warning he gives is severe. He doesn't sugarcoat it.
Not at all.
He looks the unconverted in the eye and tells them that a prayerless soul is a Christless soul.
He says God is angry with the wicked every day.
And then he goes into a description of the horrors of hell. He asks them to imagine the rich man from Jesus' parable trapped in the flames begging for a single drop of water for his blistered lips.
But the thing he anchors on is the permanence.
The word forever.
Yes, he says the hell of hells is the word forever. When they jingle the burning irons of their torments, they shall say forever.
When they howl, the echo cries forever.
It's heavy.
It is. Now, let's be honest. In modern culture, even inside the church, we go out of our way to avoid talking about divine wrath.
It feels abrasive to modern ears.
It feels unloving. So how do we process a preacher bringing up the searing permanence of hell? Is this just manipulation?
Well, if it is not true, it is the worst kind of manipulation.
Right.
But if it is true, as the scriptures claim, then failing to warn people is the most hateful form of negligence imaginable.
Oh, that's a good point.
Think back to the Eddystone Lighthouse. If the keeper decides the bright light might hurt the sailor's eyes, so he turns it off.
He is a murderer.
Exactly. Spurgeon preaches judgment not because he hates his audience, but because he loves them desperately.
He's trying to save them from the rocks.
He echoes the very heart of God in the book of Ezekiel. I have no pleasure in the death of him that dieth, but had rather that he should turn unto me and live.
The severity of the warning is directly proportional to the magnitude of the love that provided the escape.
If you remove the reality of eternal consequences, the cross of Christ just becomes a nice, inspirational martyrdom. It loses its saving power.
And the escape route he offers is so simple. It's just prayer to Jesus.
He ends the sermon pleading with them to turn to God.
He promises that God will heal their backslidings and love them freely. He says if he can just win one soul or 20 souls out of that massive crowd, he will take all the crowns he earns, cast them at Jesus' feet, and give all the glory to his name forever.
It is a stunning, exhausting conclusion to a theological masterpiece.
It truly is. I mean, look at the terrain we have covered today.
It's been a journey.
We started on a dirt road outside Damascus, watching God violently unhorse a werewolf of a persecutor.
Proving that irresistible grace can turn a murderer into an apostle.
We look through the omniscience of God to see a blind man in a dark room.
We trace the telegraph line of a single tear up to the courts of heaven where angels threw a jubilee.
We expose the terrifying difference between the plastic display food of religious recitation and the desperate groan of true prayer.
And we saw how that simple, secret act of prayer is the ultimate proof of both our present sincerity and our eternal election.
Is the ultimate diagnostic test for the soul. Like we talked about at the beginning, when you go to the doctor, you want a clear metric.
Right, you want an X-ray.
An X-ray is binary. The bone is broken or it isn't. Spurgeon has essentially handed us the spiritual X-ray.
The diagnostic marker for whether you are spiritually alive isn't your church attendance.
No.
It isn't your moral pedigree. It isn't your ability to debate Reformed theology.
It is the pulse of secret prayer.
And as long as there is that pulse, there is proof of life. A praying breath is a living soul.
So if you are listening to this right now, in your car, at the gym, or washing dishes, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Something to take with you.
Spurgeon told us that God's ear is perpetually open. He told us that heaven's telegraph is infinitely faster than any technology we will ever invent. No wires, no delays, just the instantaneous reception of a broken spirit.
Right.
If that line of communication is always wide open, and if angels are literally waiting on the edge of their seats to ring the bells of glory over you,
what does the silence or the noise of your own private room right now say about the true state of your spiritual heartbeat?
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive on Reformed thinking. Keep exploring the depths of your faith, and we will see you next time.